Welcome on into the Zig Zone. I am your host, Chaz McNeil, and we have an absolutely loaded slate today with how much talent we have on air. We've got, joining us in the studio, we've got Ben Korak, softball and hockey beat. How you doing, Ben?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Hockey had a pretty good weekend. Softball did as well, so I'm excited to talk about it.
And then we've got Artie Abrego also joining us. Artie, how are you doing with the BGSU basketball news?
I'm doing fantastic. Men's basketball qualified for the MAC tournament. They did lose to Western Michigan, but that Northern Illinois win against Central Michigan got them into Cleveland.
Yeah, so a lot of good happening this past week, and we're actually just going to get into it. We do have somebody joining us on the phone right now. We've got BGSU football beat Reese Patricus. Let's get him on air really quick. Let's just plug him in here. Reese?
Hello.
I think we can hear you. How you doing?
I'm on cloud nine right now, Chaz. How are we doing?
Good. We're doing really good. So let's just go through it. So we didn't have a show last week because of the spring break, obviously, but let's just jump right into it. Scott Loeffler, no longer the head coach for BGSU football, taking the quarterback's coach job at Philly for the Philadelphia Eagles, going to coach with Jalen Hurts. That was a massive decision, really right in the middle of the college football offseason.
Yeah, I mean, you got a couple weeks to go until spring football, and all of a sudden your coach up and leaves. Obviously, you got to scramble to find someone new because you can't go into spring football without a head coach. And I'm happy for Coach Loeffler. He did a great job turning around this program here in Bowling Green over the last 6 years. It sounds like he's getting a nice pay raise as well as, he doesn't have as much responsibility. And, for a guy like Coach Loeffler who is, he put quite literally his mind, body, and soul into this program. And it's good to see the fruits of his labor paying off.
Yeah, so you're right. He did get a pretty decent pay raise, a little bit, probably a better work-life balance now because he's going over to Philadelphia. He's not going to be the head coach, doesn't have as much to worry about, going to just get a little bit of leeway and maybe even get him into a coordinator position later on in his career, maybe in the NFL. But big congratulations to him. And then this morning, we got even better news. Reese, you want to announce that?
Yeah, so, I'll start. It was last night at about 6 o'clock. ESPN's Pete Thamel put out there that Bowling Green was in contact with college football Hall of Famer, college football great, Ohio State great Eddie George about their head coaching position. And it came out at, I'd say, about 10 o'clock this morning that the Blade put out there that Eddie George and Bowling Green were in agreement on a contract. And about an hour ago, it was officially announced by Bowling Green Athletics that Eddie George will be the 21st head coach in BGSU football history. He did a great job over the last 4 years of engineering a turnaround of Tennessee State out in the big South Ohio Valley Conference. He led them to a 9-4 record last year. He won Coach of the Year. He won the Coach of the Year award in the conference, and did overall a great job turning the Tigers around. And it also helps having a household name in the state of Ohio now. When it comes to recruiting, everyone's kind of been talking about it on social media. He should be able just to walk into really any high school he wants, and everyone's going to know who he is.
Yeah, and that brings up a really interesting point. Recruitment is a really big thing, especially when you're in the MAC. You've got to go up against a lot of those big Power 4 schools, and a couple other MAC schools are really good at recruiting. You've got Toledo, the Ohio Bobcats, Miami Redhawks. They're all very strong, but to have such a known name, a very familiar face to a lot of the Ohio State Buckeye fans, everybody in the state of Ohio, and even the area surrounding, I mean, that's not something Vandermeer does, is get that big name higher.
Yeah, and it also helps, obviously when you coach at a school like Bowling Green that's in the Mid-American Conference, you're going to want to focus on the state of Ohio. But Eddie George is also a Pennsylvania guy. So it's going to help out outside of the state of Ohio, where if you want to pull guys from Pennsylvania, it's going to help you. You might not have as much luck recruiting in Michigan just because of the Ohio State connection there. But, like I said, having a guy with that kind of name value is massive when it's going to come to recruiting, as well as there's been some rumors floating around that there's going to be a bump in funding from alumni. So I think having a name like that is also going to be big when it comes to the flow of money coming into the program.
So with an addition like this, something that we don't really see out of Derek Vandermeer, a big name guy, not really. I mean, you look at what he's done over his time at Tennessee State, nothing really too thrilling. Like you did mention, he did get that Coach of the Year award, but what additions do you think he can bring to this BGSU football roster that was looking towards really a full rebuild for the 2026 or 2025 season?
Well, in terms of players, I think there's a really good shot he's going to bring. He has a son. His name is Eric, I believe. Let me go ahead and pull this up. He's got a son named Eric who played for him at Tennessee State. He's going into his junior year. And he was a second-team All-Big South OVC defensive lineman. I think he's going to be one guy that's going to be, physically on the field that I think Coach George can bring with him. But in terms of just coaching philosophy, I mean, I think being a former running back, I think that, he's going to bring how Coach Leffler was very much, we're going to build this team from the trenches and then let everything else fall into place. I think we're going to see a very similar approach here with Coach George, being a former running back himself, build up the ground game and then let everything else fall into place from there. And it's all going to come down to, of course, who he brings along with him on his staff. He had some relatively big names on his staff at Tennessee State. He had his former head coach in the NFL and former, of course, NFL head coach Jeff Fisher was down there as an analyst. As well as Jeff Fisher's son was a defensive coordinator. There's a lot of, not household, but names that people recognize on this Tennessee State coaching staff.
And, I mean, I kind of want to go into that a little bit more because you mentioned building up the trenches, and one of the faces for BGSU football, besides Scott Leffler, was Greg Nosel, their offensive line coach. He was a big, dominant piece, a guy that a lot of the players really resounded with. I know the entire staff hasn't been announced yet, but how big would it be for a former NFL running back to keep a guy like that was so reliable at building the trenches?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be big. It's going to take a while for Coach George to build his staff, but if he can keep some of these guys around, like the Alex Bayers and the Greg Nosals of the world, if he can keep those guys around, that would be huge because those are, you can argue, two of the best position coaches in the Mid-American Conference, and you can make the argument that they're up there in terms of college football as a whole. So, it's going to be big to see if he wants to retain these guys because they're important pieces. And I also think, if some of these guys aren't kept around, if Coach George comes up, I think we're going to see a lot of people hit the portal.
So, yeah, that's a really interesting point. So the portal is something that it opened. It's a 30-day window, correct, after Coach Leffler left?
Right, 30 days, yep.
So do you think that the addition of a guy like now Coach George is it going to impact the portal in any way? Obviously, we both know the answer to this, but just go into it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's of course going to have an impact because some of these guys, maybe they were holding out to see if someone was going to get a promotion from the current staff and, keep the rest of these coaches that they've learned under for a year or two around, or a year or two, three. So it's going to affect it in the sense that we might see more people leave, but it also could affect it positively to where there's currently 3 guys who entered the portal when Coach Leffler announced that he was leaving. And it's C.J. Brown, Tracy Revels, and Marcus Moore. And we could see any of those 3 guys come back. None of them, of course, on the offensive side of the ball. None of them running backs. So maybe there's not that as big of an incentive to come back and learn under Coach George as it would be if they did play on the offensive side or if they did play running back. But I do think, and if you've been reading my replies on, or my posts on Twitter X, that it's who wouldn't want to learn under a former NFL All-Pro, Offensive Rookie of the Year, unanimous All-American, Heisman winner? Who wouldn't want to come and be coached by a guy like that?
And I mean, you mentioned all those awards. Is there any fear about, he had such a great college career, the Heismans, the amount of support he got, the brand name, the recognizability, but going into the NFL, his career didn't really turn out the way that a lot of people imagined. Do you think there would be any apprehension to anybody that was either thinking about investing in the program in any way?
I don't think so. I mean, this is, I don't think that there's really any correlation between how his NFL career turned out and how he's done as a college football coach. I don't think that there's really any sort of link there. So I don't see any reason to be apprehensive about the hire. We've seen what he's done over the last 4 years at Tennessee State. Obviously, the FCS and the FBS are 2 completely different animals, so we'll have to see, how he builds his staff and who he pulls in. If anyone chooses to leave Tennessee State and join him up here, we'll see how all that goes. But I don't see any reason to be worrisome because, not that he was a dud in the NFL, but that he wasn't one of the all-time greats in NFL history.
So if you had to put a grade on this hire, if you were, just putting a letter to it right now before anything even happens, I know it's a little early, but initial gut reaction, what would you go?
I would say that this hire's an A. I mean, everything that we've talked about over the last 13 minutes, I mean, you have name recognition in the state of Ohio, which is where your main recruiting ground is going to be, as well as the fact that now you've got donors who are super excited about this hire, and it's going to bring in a lot of money for the program, and it's going to bring in, I think, some more talent, because we've seen what Deion Sanders did when he took the job down at Jackson State. He was able, not saying that it's going to happen in Bowling Green, but he was able to flip Travis Hunter, who was the number 1 player in the class of 2021, he was able to flip him from Florida State to Jackson State. So I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a large influx of support and excitement just based off of this hire. So initial gut reaction, I think this hire's an A.
I was just about to bring that up. So you mentioned the Deion Sanders a couple of years ago going over to Jackson State, bringing his son with him. There's a lot of similarities there. This is more of a broader college football landscape question, but do you think that, the way college football is going, it's evolving, it's becoming much more of you got to recruit so much more heavy than you have in the past with NIL. There's so much fighting against you. Do you think that this style of hiring a former superstar player at the college or NFL level is really the way to go if you are more of a lower level program, not really a Power 4 or anything like that?
Yeah, I think we might see an increase in it. Of course, there's only so many college and NFL legends to go around, but I think that's why we're starting to see some of these schools go out and hire, former NFL players. Just in the last coaching cycle alone, we saw Deshaun Jackson get hired by Delaware State. Michael Vick's the new head coach at Norfolk State. Obviously, Deion Sanders was just the catalyst. And then Eddie George, I believe, was the second one to fall into place after that. So I think if this coaching cycle works out in favor of the Bowling Greens and the Delaware States and Norfolk States of the world, I think that we're going to see quite a few more teams start to pull some of these bigger names who have since retired and want to get into the coaching world out of hats. And I think it's going to help in the long run, obviously depending on how well they can coach and motivate.
Yeah, so going now into that coaching style, so you said a lot of the similarities you think is going to happen between Coach George and Coach Loeffler. Both are going to build in the trenches, but where do you see maybe some differences towards their ideologies? I mean, these are two very different style of coaches.
Yeah, I haven't done a whole bunch of, research into it just yet. I still, have to do a little bit more, but so I can't really answer that question off the top of my head right now. But I think we're just going to have to see how it all plays out. Spring practice is coming up. We're going to have to see what some of the reactions are from the players, who leaves in the spring portal and who doesn't, and then, how things work out in the spring game and once we get into the season in August.
And I opened up this question to you, Reese, but I want to open it up to the rest of the room. Where would, between Artie and Ben, you two, where would you guys rank this Coach George hire on the grade school scale of like F to A?
I would probably say probably an A to a B plus range, just because I think it's a good hire for them, just because I feel like they needed sort of a big name guy to sort of bring in more recruits, bring in a little more energy to the team. And, you had a really tight window to make this hire because the Scott Loeffler thing, it happened so quickly, so fast. You got involved in that right away in the hiring process. So I think it's a good hire for them. I mean, we don't know anything really until the season starts, I would say, what's going to happen, how's he going to coach. We can look at the stats and everything, but I'm more interested to see how he handles the locker room, what the players think of him, that type of deal. So I would give it an A to a B for right now.
Yeah, I'd say pretty similar. I'd probably say a B by everything that I've seen. It is impressive how he's able to, as Reese said pretty well a minute ago, turn around a program, a 5-win team when he came in and a 9-win team when he left, and an appearance in the FCS. So that's some impressive stuff. I like that he's a defensive guy. I think defensive guys tend to play a brand of football that I at least enjoy watching and seems to be successful. And I think he's going to have pretty good control of the locker room based on the personality that I've seen from him in a couple of things. So still have a little bit of doubts. That's why I'd give him a B. He wasn't immensely successful with Tennessee State and FCS, but he's got more resources now, and I think he does have a name behind him. So for sure, one that's a little bit, I think, uncharacteristic for Derek, but still a pretty good one, I'd say.
And I think we can go into that a little bit because the hires of Derek Vandermeer are usually much more on the side of they're not really relatively well-known names. They're a little under the radar, but then you look at their resumes and they are just blooming with opportunities. There's so much there. You look at Dennis Williams, Willie for hockey. He came from some relatively unknown backgrounds. Todd Simon coming over, I believe, Artie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Southern Utah?
Arkansas. Wait. I think it was Utah, actually.
It was Southern Utah.
Was it Southern Utah?
I believe.
I get Southern Utah and Utah State always mixed up.
For some reason, I always think Southern Arkansas. For some reason, I don't know why I think that.
Probably because they played Arkansas this season.
Probably, I think that's what it is. But it was probably Southern Utah.
My issue, Reese, you might be able to disagree with this. The thing that separates this from other Derek hires is he's had 1 of 4 seasons that he's had a winning record, and 1 of 4 seasons where he's had a winning conference record, I believe. And the other ones, like Willie, you mentioned, won at every single stop that he coached along his coaching tenure. Del Piombo, who was just hired, won with Bowling Green. She won pretty well before that as well. Looking at it now, 2023, he had a 2-4 conference record, but a 6-5 overall record, so that's improvement. I just feel like success-wise and what he's done at his previous stops, it's a little bit of a step back from what we've seen at other head coaching hires, even with Todd Simon, Fred Schmiel, and some other places.
Yeah, I think you have to look at the fact that when he was hired, Tennessee State was in the gutter. The guy who coached before him, Rod Reed, he only had 4 winning seasons, and then his last 3 years at the helm of Tennessee State, he went 4-5, 2-8, and 2-5. So I think what kind of the situation that Coach George walked into was similar to that of what Scott Loeffler walked into here in Bowling Green, and it was a program that was in disarray. It was heavily on the decline. And he had to walk in and completely turn it around. So I don't think it's 100% fair to judge him solely based off of his coaching record, just because, he had to turn this program around. His first year, he went 5-6. He went 4-7 the next year, and then 6-5, and then this year 9-4 with a championship or a conference championship and a conference coach of the year award. So I don't think it's 100% fair to judge him solely off of his record. And even at that, he does have a winning record as the head coach at Tennessee State. So to walk into a situation like that and still walk out above 500, I do think that deserves some applause.
And I think you're right about that, because, it doesn't, quite frankly, looking at it, it doesn't bounce off the stat sheet. You look at what he's done, but also the fact that this was really his first head coaching job, the way it was able to develop, turning it into a winning program. And obviously he wasn't done with that success, but still now he's going over to Bowling Green. And yeah, Bowling Green is going to have a lot of pitfalls. You look at a lot of the transfers, you've got a lot of the star players, you've got Harold Fannin Jr. going to the draft, a lot of other players either throwing their hat into the draft ring or even just running out of eligibility. So there's a lot for Coach George to do, I'd say, and Reese, I'd say you'd agree with me too, but I think this hire, at least to me, does not signal a rebuild. It signals more of a restructure.
Yeah. And he's going to have to jump in. The ink hasn't even dried on his contract yet, and I would hope he's already out recruiting because, again, you've still got a touch under 3 weeks left for players to jump into the portal. So you've got to jump in and immediately get to recruiting these players and telling them, hey, this is why I think you should stay. This is what my philosophy is. This is what we're going to build here in Bowling Green. This is what's going to happen. And, I want you to be a part of this.
So, and now you look over at the schedule. I think the 2025 schedule really was, after the season, kind of daunting. And you're looking at it now. They opened the season against Lafayette, and then you've got Cincinnati, Liberty, and Louisville all in a row. And it's a touch easier than last year. They faced off against some very strong competition against Penn State. How well do you think that this new look Bowling Green team, and it's way too early to even really be asking this, but how well do you think they can contend in the MAC with this brand new head coach hire?
It's all going to depend on what the final roster looks like, because we don't know if he's going to bring anyone with him from Tennessee State, who's going to stay here, who's going to go. So I do think, you are right. I think it's a little bit too early to tell, just based on right now, because we don't know how the roster is going to look 24 hours from now or a week from now. So.
And yeah, so I think you're right about that. It's just that's the way the college football landscape goes. There's so much turmoil with rosters, and losing a head coach really was not ideal. I think this was a really good way to kind of stop the bleeding a little bit, was to get such a big name in the building and committed, even if his success isn't what you'd initially imagine. But yeah, I think it does come down to what's going to happen with that initial roster. I think you're right about that. So, Reese, do you have anything else about this hire that really kind of resonates with you?
I think I've gotten everything that I want to say off my chest. Yeah, I think it's going to be great for recruiting. I think we're going to see a lot more talent than we're used to seeing walking through the door over the next couple of months, year or so. In terms of who's coming in from the high school ranks, just because of the opportunity to learn under a guy who had so much success at the college level.
Right, and I think you're right about that. It'll be interesting to see, but we've got a long time until fall sports kick back off. We're actually wrapping up winter just now, so I want to say thank you, Reese, for joining us. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to have some men's basketball talk with our own Artie Abrego in studio. So again, thank you so much, Reese, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, awesome. We're going to head to a quick break. Don't forget, you are listening to the Zig Zone right here on WBGU 88.1 FM.
Hey there, I'm Ben Korak, the voice of Falcon Hockey, and you are listening to WBGU 88.1 FM, your home for BGSU hockey.
And just like that, we have one of the quickest breaks you could ever ask for, as that was just about 10 seconds. But Artie, so much has happened in the MAC tournament situation. It felt like I was watching the game where they put the ball under the cup and they shuffle around. But everything got situated, and we've now arrived. Talk to us about what's up next for BGSU men's basketball.
Well, you're absolutely right, Chaz. It kind of went down in a way that I didn't expect. I thought Bowling Green was going to come in the Stroh Center and really take the victory over Western Michigan. Did not head down that road. Western Michigan picked up the win, and they qualified for the MAC tournament. But Bowling Green still had a chance to qualify for the MAC tournament with a Northern Illinois win. They went to a double overtime with Central Michigan, and then they won the game somehow. It's just was one of the craziest things you ever see, because they lost 10 in a row. They accidentally hit the game-winning shot, and then they managed to hold off Central Michigan long enough to pick up the win in the last game of the season. But looking ahead for Bowling Green, now they've qualified for Cleveland as the 8th seed, so they'll be going up against the number 1 seed Akron Zips in the first round of the MAC tournament in Cleveland.
And, I mean, I don't think you put enough hype behind that last-second score. It was double overtime at Mount Pleasant in Central Michigan, and it was like a lob pass that just kind of dropped in the bucket. You could tell that didn't look like a pass from NIU. This is an NIU team that really, their season derailed early with injuries, kind of similarly to Bowling Green, but the Falcons did everything that they could to sneak into the MAC tournament. They didn't end up getting the job done against Western, and then you get really a miracle happening late. I mean, I was quite frankly speechless when I saw that pass.
I mean, so what happened was James Dent Jr., he was trying to throw the ball on the inside where his center was, so he's trying to do, like you mentioned, like kind of a lob pass, trying to get him in the middle. Only a couple of seconds left on the clock, so it was the correct pass to make during that period of time, because he really had nothing else. So he threw it up. It goes off the backboard, somehow goes into the rim, spins around, and boom, game winner somehow. So isn't really what you'd expect in a double overtime game. Northern Illinois was starting a player also called David Mack, who's a walk-on freshman. That was his first game. That was the most minutes he played all season, 11 minutes, and he was pretty much starting for both overtime periods, and he scored 7 points and hit a 3. So Northern Illinois just not what you expect for a team that was 2-16 in the conference to go up against a team that was in Central Michigan that was looking to qualify for the MAC tournament, and they somehow did.
And that's such a heartbreaker for Central Michigan, too. I mean, this isn't... I talked about this a little bit, Ben. I think you can resonate, too. This is a little bit of a tough break for Central Michigan. They were the 2 seed in volleyball during the MAC tournament in the fall, and then they lost in the first round. Just something that you don't really expect out of a team like that. That's always they look so good, and they did the same thing in basketball. They looked really dominant. They had the tiebreaker against BGSU. Everything was going their way, and then you just get a scrappy NIU team coming in and taking away all the glory.
Yeah, it's tough for sure. It really does suck to lose in that way on the last of the season. They had a pretty decent final stretch as well, but they didn't necessarily do what they had to do, like Bowling Green did what they had to do. Well, kind of did what they had to do. They did have a 3-game losing streak. It looks like Kent State, Akron, and Ohio. That was a rough stretch. Beat Western Michigan toward the end, beat Ball State toward the end. that NIU one was really one that they had to take. And you know, there are three of those teams that we just mentioned, Western, Bowling Green, and Central Michigan, had to win and able to punch their ticket. And it was much easier for Central to do so, and they weren't able to do it. I mean, we'll take it. You know, as Bowling Green fans, we'll you know, take the appearance and have to play Akron in the first round, I suppose. But that's a definitely heartbreaking way to lose it for Central Michigan, and even on what is essentially a mistake. You know, NIU didn't. The pass could have very easily been intercepted, and they could have ended the game, you know, a second later. So it's, you know, it is what it is. It sucks. It's why you play the game, and it's beneficial to Bowling Green, who frankly everything this season has pointed to, you know, not getting in, and somehow they backed their way in on some luck, some mistakes. You know, you lost the game that you had to win, and somehow still got in. I mean, it's good for the team. It's good for Ted Simon to get another win under or another appearance under his belt in this season where he's had a lot of adversity. A lot of the players as well are probably I don't know if you can be proud, you know, losing the last game of the season. That's why this is so tough for me to qualify. I'm sure Artie feels the same way, because it's not. It would have had a different feel if you had beat Western Michigan and you had got in, but you didn't. You lost in the game where it really mattered. Even though you had a big winning streak coming up, I'll acknowledge that you lost in the game that mattered, and you still got in. But that's why it's so tough for me to say I'm, you know, proud of this team.
So I understand what you're saying, and I do agree with you somewhat with what you're saying. Like, obviously, you wanted to win that game against Western Michigan. Yeah. Well, that's what you go in to do.
You essentially had to win.
You had to win to get in.
Yes.
That was the situation.
Yeah.
That's what Western Michigan was facing as well. You lost 64-63 by 1 point, and you were pretty much down. You were pretty much following them behind the entire second half. Not really what you want by any means. But when you watch the locker room, so they put a video out on Instagram of just the locker room reacting into Cleveland. Mm-hmm. They were absolutely hyped. Yeah. I think because they know all the work they put in this season. They won 4 games down the stretch when they were pretty much out of it. They started the MAC schedule with about 5 straight losses after getting like 2 wins on the board. Mm-hmm. So to start out. So just watching their reaction, it made it feel earned. Like, even though it wasn't the way you wanted to get in. You want to get in with a win. You want to go in with momentum. You're still in the tournament. So you can. It's a really tough matchup against Akron. I will not do that. But just getting into the tournament for this team is just extremely gratifying, and I think they realize that.
Some very impressive stuff. The video was pretty cool. I think it was Kyle Edmonds' laptop. We all love Kyle and the Falcon Media Sports Network as well for all the work that he helps us complete. And it does seem like you know, that 4-game win streak does earn them a way in. You know, they had the amount of wins. They didn't have the tiebreaker, but they didn't need it. They did earn their way in. It's just that it's kind of like the football season. We had a couple of games that left a sour taste in your mouth. That game kind of did it for me, where like you had the opportunity, you had a pretty decent lead at one point, and you didn't end up winning the game when it mattered. And you know, if you're dropping a crunch time game to Western Michigan, it makes it very even less of a chance that you're going to beat Akron in the first round, unfortunately, and which is a very good team and a very tall order to be able to come away with a win there and win a game in the MAC tournament.
Yeah, so just going through Akron for people who aren't familiar. So when you do the comparison with, you know, points scored, Akron is pretty high up on most of the standings in overall statistics because they've been the top team all year long. So they've scored 84 points per game. They were kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of defense. They allow about 74.6 points per game, but they're second in the conference in shooting at 47%. 3-pointers also second in the conference at 36%. And then when you look at that, and then top in rebounding. So they're top team in rebounding, so 39.5 rebounds per game. Assists, much better than the Falcons, 18.2 per game, and then Bowling Green's at the bottom with 11.32. So it's, like you mentioned, a very, very, very tough matchup for Bowling Green. You're walking in as the obvious underdogs in the first game of the MAC tournament at 11 a.m. for the men's side of the tournament. So it's a really tough matchup for them, as you mentioned. But they're going into the MAC tournament with a ton of momentum, despite the Western Michigan game. You still went 4-1 in the last 5 games, but Akron has also won 4 in a row. So they're coming off wins against Toledo, Kent State, Ball State, and then an 18-point victory against one of the second to last team of the conference, Buffalo. still, I feel like just getting into the tournament, anything can really happen in March. So maybe I'm feeling a little optimistic, but part of it just I want to see how they perform against a team like this, because I'm not really. You can't really expect to go in with a win in a matchup like this, but you can't really put everything out until it happens.
I mean, it already puts a somewhat of a win on the season just to even make the tournament.
Oh, absolutely.
In which case, even if you get blown out in the first round, it sucks, but you made it. You get to put that on put the number next to Todd Simon's name again, and go focus on next year when you're back to healthy. So even season long, there's certain bad aspects about it. The injuries was the main thing, but I'd say that the way it happened, it's an absolute win of a season, even if you don't. You lose by 20, still win of the season. You're just trying to make it. 5 weeks ago, we were talking about how they weren't going to make it. We were talking about women's, is women's going to make it? A look ahead, and the panic button was pressed, and somehow they backed their way in.
Down 3 starters. Sam Towns, Yusuf Kayat went out with injuries way early in the season. Trey Thomas broke his leg really late down the stretch right before the Toledo game. So it looked like it was pretty much all over, but they somehow clobbered together this win streak. They got 4 in a row, somehow qualified. So I would definitely say, like you said, Ben, this is definitely a win for them just to be able to make it into the tournament. That's kind of where I was at. Like, just if they just got into the tournament, whatever, 7th, 8th seed, it would have been a victory for them, because this is an entirely new team they pretty much brought in after a lot of guys like Marcus Hill, Rashawn Agee transferred out, Jason Spurgeon graduated. So bringing in all these new guys, about 10 new players, and to be able to make the MAC tournament is insanely impressive to me.
And, you brought it up, Artie. You lose a lot of those starters, those key guys that didn't really have the synergy that you wanted throughout the beginning of the season. And then as the season went on, they still couldn't build up that chemistry because most of them were hurt. They're banged up. You don't get the look you want. And you brought this up a couple weeks ago on the Zig Zone, but I think the turning point, I think you'd agree with me here, is moving Derek Butler to that second unit, moving him to the bench. Really kind of was the catalyst. It was the spark, and you get to see him kind of lead that unit, and then you get that primary unit to kind of feel a little bit more fluid. I think that was the spark.
I think there are 2 things you can point at that really changed the season around for them. One is the Derek Butler thing. That I think that was absolutely crucial to at least getting the second unit in more of a groove, which pretty much consists of Wilkins Jr. and Braylon Green. So that kind of got them in a better groove, and then moving Derek to the bench, I think that worked a lot better.
Well, didn't the last couple of games they start?
He did start him, but that's why I'm bringing
still
up.
Winning.
That's why I'm bringing up first, because it only lasted a couple weeks or a couple games at most. I think the big turnaround of the season was getting Dejan Humphrey back midway through the season after he'd been out for so long with an injury. I think getting him back was absolutely crucial, because I think you were missing that sort of guard that does all the dirty work for them, takes the charges, tries to take the fouls, that type of deal. I think he was that missing energy that was sort of absent in the starting lineup, at least in the guards area. Because, Javonte Campbell, Derek Butler, my apologies, are phenomenal players. Derek Butler, great scorer. Javonte Campbell, great scorer, great defender. Pretty much been playing with one hand all season. But I think getting Dejan Humphrey back, he added a layer of intensity that I think was missing from the starting lineup for most of the season. So I think getting him back was absolutely crucial in getting things turned around.
Yeah, and losing Trey Thomas might have even been another one where he wasn't playing fantastic. He wasn't playing bad, but he wasn't like what we were kind of expecting out of Trey Thomas to do or what he could do. So actually, the last game I just found out was Kent State. I don't know the exact day. That was the last time that Derek Butler came off the bench. That was February 18th. The last time that he did, that was when Trey Thomas got hurt, I believe, and then Dejan Humphrey also came back around that time as well, around the Toledo game, if I'm not mistaken. I think Artie's completely accurate, and I think earlier in the season, don't remember exactly when Humphrey got hurt, but he, in my opinion, just frankly wasn't playing too well. And then when he came back, it seemed like he really had a fire underneath him, and he started playing well, maybe understanding that it was down to crunch time and he really had to push, but he started playing very well. I think that was a really big one. Also, I mean, the consistency all season from Javonte Campbell is probably the most impressive thing I've seen out of either basketball team this season. But before the season, I said I love Javonte Campbell. I thought he was going to be the best player, but even he surpassed my expectation of him. There really isn't an argument to be made that he's not. You could argue Marcus Johnson's a better scorer, but Javonte Campbell's certainly the best player, and playing for half the season with 2 fingers busted up on his primary hand. I mean, it's a fantastic feat for Javonte Campbell, who kind of quietly led a team through so much adversity and filled in for what Trey Thomas left a little bit, filled in for what Marcus Hill left a little bit from last year to this year. And I just love Javonte Campbell so much. MVP of the men's basketball season, I'd say, in my opinion.
I fully agree with that.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah. So if you look at it, I believe he played more games with one hand. So he hurt the hand against Ball State on January 11th. In that first Ball State game.
Yeah.
So he played 16 games with a cast on his hand.
Yeah. Averaging only one less point scoring than Marcus Johnson, pretty much the same amount of rebounding with more steals, more blocks, far more assists, essentially the same amount of turnovers, a little bit more fouls. I mean, what more can you expect from Javonte Campbell coming in here and filling a massive role in Marcus Hill? I think we can have an argument a different day, but Marcus Hill was a heck of a player, heck of a scorer, but Javonte is a more well-rounded player, I'd say.
I would agree with you.
Maybe a more useful one to a full five-man team.
I would say Marcus was a better scorer. But,
for sure.
Sure, because he was averaging 20. He had that insane stretch of 8 20-point games, one of the top in the country. But Javonte Campbell's a much better defender. And I would say, I think that's obvious to everyone. He had about 87 steals to end the season, broke a BG record. So it's not crazy to say that he's the more well-rounded player, a little more. I mean, they play very similar styles. Javonte's a really inside scorer game, so it was kind of interesting to see. But
not to mention above that 50% from the field mark. Where was Marcus? Marcus was at like 57% or something wild last year. But even Javonte was just so reliable, especially down the stretch when Trey wasn't and Derek Butler was having some struggles and Dejon Humphrey was just coming back. You had a guard in there that was going to give you a consistent play every single game. I think that was very important for a team that didn't have too much of that, especially with the struggles Marcus Johnson had scoring in one half and not the next, and certain other guys, Jemai Felt, maybe getting into foul trouble. His offensive production wasn't as high as maybe it could have been if he had a guy behind him that he could play knowing. But it is impressive stuff to say the least.
I also want to say, going back to the Javonte Campbell versus Marcus Johnson.
Yeah, he also did have a higher field goal percentage than Marcus Hill. I just want to say that.
I think Marcus Johnson also struggles from the fact that he can get cold very quickly.
Yeah.
And when he gets cold, he struggles to heat back up. And the thing about Javonte Campbell is the consistency at the end of the day, where he can have a couple misses here and there. I mean, there was a crucial 3 that he ended up missing against Western Michigan late in the game. But it almost felt like when you watch the team, when Marcus Johnson was playing very well, he was the superstar. He was everything you expected him to be, but the team couldn't win with just him sustaining. But when he went cold, the rest of the team around him wouldn't really be able to do anything. When Javonte Campbell was the primary guy, the guy that you would rely on to score and all of that, the team was able to kind of band around him a little bit more. Maybe it's because of his playing style or something like that.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it boiled down to that.
6 games in a row, he scored 20 points. That includes the 4-game win streak. The only game recently that he hasn't scored 20 points. Since February 11th, he scored 20 points every game except for the Michigan game, which was a loss. So, I mean, he was fantastic player, 20-plus points every game. There's no more consistency you could expect out of a player. He was averaging about 4 rebounds a game, a couple of assists as well. He's a very good passer, a pretty true free throw shooter as well, which is a very valuable asset to have, or true free throw shooter compared to the rest of the MAC and to the rest of the team. I thought when Marcus Johnson was playing very well, everybody gave him his flowers, but nobody was harping on Javonte Campbell enough for how well he played all season. Is arguably the reason that Bowling Green went on that 4-game win streak and jumped back into the MAC tournament.
I totally agree with that. And I think the thing about the flowers is 100% true. I mean, besides that game-winning layup he had against Toledo, I don't think Javonte Campbell got the respect he deserved until
I actually forgot about
last
that.
week.
Yeah, I forgot that happened, amazingly enough. But
I mean, so many crazy things have happened over the past couple weeks.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned the thing about Campbell, and I think he didn't score 20 points against Western Michigan. I want to go to that final minute against Western. You've got a defensive rebound by Wilkins Jr. exact. And then Marcus Johnson misses a jumper. It's a defensive rebound. Butler fouls, and then it goes down to 40 seconds. There's a layup, 63-59. Season, it's looking over. And then you have a layup by Javonte Campbell. Marcus Johnson fouls. Both free throws are missed, which was kind of miraculous for Bowling Green. And then Javonte Campbell gets fouled. He makes both the free throws, ties the game, and then a foul really ended it at the end by Derek Butler. But besides that, I mean, you really look at it, Javonte Campbell was the reason the Falcons were able to close that and really have hope with, I believe, what was it, already 12 seconds left?
It was about 12 seconds. Yeah. There was only a couple.
And you're asking him to pull up and make a three-pointer that's just clearly not his game. I mean, I think last year as well, if we were in that same situation and Marcus Hill was taking a three-pointer, if he missed it, we'd be like, well, that's not Marcus's game. Marcus is a dribble driver. That's where his wheelhouse is. So it's a little bit of a tough ask for him in that spot, but even he, as you said, kept him in it with his, play without the ball a lot of the time, or his nose for the ball. He really is a fantastic player. And I just looked this up right now. The last 3 times Marcus Johnson has had a 20-point game, Bowling Green has lost: Western Michigan, Ohio, and Kent State. So that's probably a testament to diversifying who's scoring, maybe a testament to the team just not playing well, and Marcus just needs to get buckets. But the last 3 times he scored 20 points, they've lost the game. So,
and
however you want to take it.
Well, going back to the final shot quickly against Western Michigan, so it was 64-63. They had to throw it up the court. They had Marcus Johnson on the inbound, and that final pass with the Dejan Humphrey was just an insanely hard shot to hit because Marcus Johnson has to throw it all the way up the court. It's going to Dejan because he's the only one in the area that's open, and he's got to hit a 3 in transition with like 1 second on the clock. So, I mean, it was a pretty valiant effort by him to even attempt that and even to get it off in time, even if it didn't go in.
And you're right about that.
And I mean, like, what's Dejan Humphrey's 3-point percentage on the season? Looking
on
at
the
it right
season,
now,
it's about it's on.
So there was a
40%, 40.4%.
I mean, statistically, a 4 out of 10 chance that he hits that shot, even in prime situation.
Absolutely.
With a second on the clock, he's got to get it off fast, not even knowing if the ball's going to get to him if it's intercepted, not knowing if the pass is going to land. It's what are you going to do? It's the game of basketball. It didn't fall your way, unfortunately, and but the game was full team effort. I'd say it didn't fall, and I thought they were pretty evenly matched teams. I don't think, just looking at it without watching the game, if you'd looked at it that way and just looked at the win or the loss, I don't think there was a bad option. I don't think either one making the MAC tournament would have been a bad thing.
No, I think you're right. I think especially now, both teams. We talked about Bowling Green needed to win that game to make the MAC tournament, and there was so much riding on that. But similarly, so did Western Michigan. I mean, Western Michigan were also in a must-win situation. They weren't just – it wasn't like Bowling Green was playing a Miami who had already had a top spot locked up, and then they were just kind of playing because they had to. It was on the schedule. No, Western needed to win that game regardless of what happened with Central Michigan and Ball State. And I think because of that, too, we're kind of skewing the game a little bit. It wasn't just a Bowling Green needed to win. Both teams needed to win. Western got a really gritty win, and I'm excited for them. They've got a pretty good look going into the MAC tournament. They play at Kent State, and honestly,
I wouldn't say a good look.
I mean,
it's a better
Kent
look.
State and Akron are very good teams.
I mean, Kent State went to the finals last year on an 8 seed.
Is it not better than Akron, though?
I feel like Kent State is a very consistent team, especially when it comes to the
tournament. It's better than Akron, but barely, I'd say. Based on the limited amount that I've watched them play, I mean, those are two very good, clear, far and away the top 2 teams.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kent State is extremely consistent when it comes to the MAC tournament. They went to the finals last year on an 8 seed and arguably should have won that game against Akron. But until the last second foul by Julius Rons, who didn't know the score and fouled when sent Akron to the free throw line. So they arguably should have won that game or should have had a chance to win that game, but it was just mismanagement.
It is a different year, but I don't think until you got to that 3rd seed from the bottom that you were safe. I just these 2 teams are essentially automatic losses, unfortunately. And for both for Bowling Green and Western Michigan, it's good that they got in. But like Artie and I said a second ago, I think I think you could pretty much chalk it up. It would be a miracle if they won. This would be essentially like beating Michigan State earlier in the season.
I would say
I wouldn't go that far.
Last year, Kent State at the 8th did beat Toledo at the 1 to kick off the men's side of the tournament. So I wouldn't rule anything out until everything happens. You know,
And
it doesn't look extremely good for the Falcons.
If you had to put your tuition on it,
oh,
that's what I'm saying.
My
That's what I'm
tuition,
saying.
that's a lot of money, man.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's just all I'm saying.
Ben, if I put your soul on it, I think Bowling Green beats Akron.
Okay,
I'll take that
if
deal.
it's my soul,
I'll take that
that's unsurprising.
If it's anyone other's soul than
Yeah.
mine, then I would
yeah,
probably take that.
Everybody's soul in this room except for mine. I think Bowling Green beats Akron.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Well. Yeah. Sure.
But I mean, let's talk about the MAC tournament for a second. So it's number 1 Akron versus number 8 Bowling Green. Ben's already written Akron's trip to the NCAA tournament at this point.
I did not say that. Although they are, I did just look it up. They are one of the highest ranked automatic qualifiers, according to who is this writer? I don't know who this writer is that put it down. But the full breakdown and prediction, they're one of the highest automatic qualifiers. I think right now they're the 52, number 52, and only 3 or 4 spots above. So if they go on a tear, they could have. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I can break down the men's side of the
Yeah, you got
the opening round if you want me to,
Yeah.
Jazz.
I would love that.
So kicking off, like I mentioned before, at 11 a.m., Akron versus number 8 seed Bowling Green. So that's going to
Bright
11
and
a.m.
early.
Bright and early. We'll be there. Me and Tyler
No.
Cablets will be on the call for that one, I believe. And then 30 minutes after the conclusion of Game 2, it's number 4 Toledo against number 5 Ohio. And then again, 30 minutes after that game, it concludes number 2 Miami versus number 7 Eastern Michigan. And following that is the final game of that day, of that Thursday, March 13th. It's Kent State versus Western Michigan.
I did this on the broadcast with Sean Connolly on Friday at the start of the CCHA playoffs. Should we all make our prediction for who's going to win each game?
I was going to do that, yeah.
Almost like fill out a bracket almost.
Well, so-
Maybe just for the first round.
Well, so I want to say
We can go
this.
first
I think
round,
we
yeah.
do first round. I want to say this is. Well, let's do this to close out too, because
Okay, we'll do it to
That's
close
fair.
out.
That's fair.
So
We'll do it to close out.
I mean,
So we'll put a rain check on it, and we'll fill out a full bracket for each of us.
I was saying to close out men's basketball, not the whole show.
Oh, I thought you meant the whole show.
No,
I
It's
feel
a
like
really
that'd be a
long
good way to
bracket
close out the whole
breakdown.
show.
I mean, do you want to do that?
We can do that.
Okay,
It's gonna take a minute.
that's true. So yeah,
it's up to you, Mr. Host.
We'll put that on hold for now. I will say I think we'll all have similar answers, and we've
Well,
got.
I thought you were ride or dying with Bowling Green.
Oh, I am.
Okay, so we're not gonna have similar answers. Unfortunately.
You never know. Don't let your opponent know your next move, is what they always say. But we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have a nice little trivia question and then followed up with Falcon Media Sports Network's own Lucas Kleinmeyer with women's basketball. We're going to be talking all of that action with the women's side of the MAC tournament going on this week as well. But before we do take a quick break, I want to float this question out first. So, NIU announced a couple weeks ago that they were going to end up going to the Horizon League. They're no longer going to be a MAC school anymore. They're moving over to, I believe it's is it the Sun Belt? No, it's the Mountain West.
Mountain West.
Mountain West.
Sunbelt.
I mean,
To count in the Sun Belt, they don't get any sun.
I feel like
at
that'd
all.
be a downgrade, honestly.
I mean, it definitely is a downgrade going to the Horizon League. But then now UMass is coming in. If you could add any other addition to replace NIU, who would it be and why?
Oh wow.
And that's going to be coming up in just a couple minutes. Don't forget you are listening to the Zig Zone right here on 88.1 or WBGU 88.1 FM.
Are you a fan of BG Falcon Media and the Falcon Media Sports Network? You can show your support for BGSU Student Media by donating at the bottom of the page of stories on bgfalconmedia.com.
My name is Jamal Johnson, number 6, running back in the senior, and here are my Falcon 4 favorite candies. First, we have Skittles, Sour Patch Kids, Reese's Pieces, and Hershey Kisses. And these are my favorite because when you're at Halloween and you dump out that bag, these are the best Halloween candies to pull out. So those are my favorites.
know Falcon Media Sports Network has video highlights of BGSU athletic events? To see all the moments from your favorite BGSU teams and athletes, head over to the BG Falcon Media YouTube channel or view them on bgfalconmedia.com.
Are you a fan of BG Falcon Media and the Falcon Media Sports Network? You can show your support for BGSU student media by donating at the bottom of the page of stories on bgfalconmedia.com.
For the fourth consecutive year, Falcon Media Sports Network will have coverage of the entire MAC men's and women's basketball tournament at Rockin' Arena in Cleveland, Ohio. The women's tournament will start on Wednesday, March 12th, with the men's beginning on Thursday, March 13th. Both championship games will be held on Saturday, March 15th. Broadcasts of all BGSU women's basketball games and both championship contests will air on WBGU 88.1 FM. All other games will air on Falcon Radio, streaming on bgfalconmedia.com. To keep up with all the coverage by Falcon Media Sports Network's Tyler Kavlitz, Lucas Kleinmeyer, Artie Abrego, Caden Knapp, Henry Costco, Jack Rintema, and Dane Leiniger, check out bgfalconmedia.com and BG_FMSN on Twitter X, and head over to the BG Falcon Media YouTube channel. Isaac.
Welcome back here to the Zig Zone. I'm Chaz McNeil, your host, filling in for Holden Ruck, joined by Falcon Media Sports Network's Ben Korak and Artie Abrego. When we went to break, I asked, what, with NIU leaving for the Horizon League and the Mountain West, what school would you like to replace them? Can't say UMass because they're already going to be injected into the MAC this upcoming season. So, Ben, you've been doing a lot of research. Do you want to go first or do you want to go last?
I wouldn't say I've been doing a lot of research. I can kick it off because I kind of have two answers. My first one is going to be Boston College. I think that'd be a really unique rival for UMass and a pretty similar location as well. I think sporting-wise, they're probably bottom of the ACC if I had to make a statement. And I think they'd fit in decently well. My other one would be Temple. I would say Temple, Philadelphia. I like to keep things regional in conferences. Like, I don't like the Big Ten going to the West Coast. I don't like the SEC expanding necessarily or anything like that. So keeping it regional, I would say Temple would be another one. Philly would be a cool place. It's a big city for a MAC school. That'd be kind of a weird, weird dynamic going to a big city to watch a MAC team play. But I think Temple is a pretty good contender in my opinion.
All right, Artie, you're up.
Alabama. I don't have a reason. I think that would be funny. No, in all my serious answer, I've been looking around. I think I agree with Ben. I don't like it when conferences go to you stay in the Midwest and then you have a random team from the West Coast like the Big Ten does now, which has just always been really weird to me.
Ridiculous.
I would say I think Iowa might be interesting, honestly.
Wow.
It's kind of weird.
That's a big school.
I know, but I feel like they would fit in well.
That feels like a Midwest kind of.
Midwest kind of school, kind of similar defensive-minded team that I think would fit well in the MAC. It is a bigger school, little bit of a bigger seat capacity in a lot of arenas in the MAC, but I think they would fit in well if you would really think about it.
I do really like that answer because it does give off that Midwest vibe. They've got a nice culture to them that I feel like the Big Ten doesn't fit with the Big Ten's culture as much.
Yeah,
I feel like the Big Ten lost a little bit of their culture when they started expanding.
I know.
Past that.
I agree. In the same way, I feel like Missouri doesn't fit in the SEC.
Yes.
I feel like Missouri would be. I mean, clearly they would smack every MAC team now based on what they have, but being a Power 5. But I think as a university and a location, I feel like they'd fit much better in the MAC than in the SEC.
I agree with that. And now going to my answer, it's the obvious one. I want to see Bowling Green versus Bowling Green. Give me Western Kentucky. I think that's a match made in heaven. I mean, the MAC inherits Big Red, which is one of the best mascots in the entire college football, college basketball, college anything landscape. And then you've got Bowling Green versus Bowling Green, because Bowling Green, Kentucky is where Western Kentucky is, and then obviously self-explanatory with the Falcons. But I think that would be really cool. They have a similar energy. They're weird, they're wacky, and Some would say, get ready for a pun. I'd say they're pretty Macky, if you ask me.
That was terrible, but I get what you were going for. But also, Big Red looks like something I'd see in my nightmares.
Yeah, Big Red's awful.
That is terrifying looking.
Do you even know their mascot?
Isn't his name Big Red?
No. Their nickname, I should say.
It's like
It's a very tough one.
It's like the Pokies or the something.
What?
It's
That's
like
Hokies for Virginia Tech.
Isn't it like it's? Oh, it's what is it?
It's Hilltoppers.
Oh
Western
yeah, no, I
Kentucky
wasn't getting that.
Hilltoppers.
I was not getting that.
Okay, well,
dude, I'm sorry. He looks terrifying.
He looks like red night terrors.
Come on, you guys are radio guys. You got to describe what he looks like.
Okay, so he's like he looks like a red frog, kind of like I don't know how to extract. It looks like he's like a dinosaur looking dude.
You know that big red heart-shaped monster from Bugs Bunny?
Oh,
that's what he looks like.
Gossamer. Someone.
Is that really his name?
That's his name?
Yeah.
Gossamer?
The guy with the really weird nails?
Yeah.
That's a tough name.
Look up Gossamer, and if I get it right, you owe me $1 million.
No, maybe not.
Your soul. We can go back to
Gossamer. I'm not seeing anything about
Look, Gossamer Looney Tunes.
A fine, filmy substance consisting of cobwebs spun by small spiders. Let's look at images. Oh, it is.
Yep.
It is Gossamer.
Oh, Bang.
That's the dude's name?
What a pull.
I never knew his name.
Yeah, that is Big Red, though.
It does look like Big Red.
Big Red looks like
a big red hairy monster.
He looks like one of those like horror games where like you play in like a children's playhouse and like it's supposed to be scary.
Yeah.
That's what he looks like.
He looks like propaganda during the Cold War. Does he not?
All right, enough dogging on Big
The
Red.
Red Scare.
We've got Lucas Kleinmeyer waiting in the wings. We can't keep him waiting for much longer, so we're going to roll a legal ID. We will be right back. You are listening to the Zig Zone right here on WBGU 88.1 FM.
You are listening to WBGU 88.1 FM, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
Welcome back here to the Zig Zone. We have Lucas Kleinmeyer, women's basketball beat, waiting in the wings. Lucas, can you hear us?
I gotta say, that trivia segment was probably the most 5 minutes of most randomest things I've ever heard in my life, and it makes for good radio. So I mean, I'm not. Oh man, I appreciate Artie's ability to pull a Big Ten team into the MAC. I think that's dreaming pretty big, but also
Lucas, what's your take on it? Who do you think it should
I was actually going to say Western Kentucky, but Chad took it.
Okay.
Well, I didn't take it. I came up with the question. But how do you feel about Gossamer and Big Red?
I don't know. Whatever.
All right.
Your pun was so flat. Anyway, move on.
All right, Lucas. So Western Kentucky is not in the MAC, but there are plenty of teams in the conference, and women's MAC tournament is about to kick off. Do you want to run us through what's going on with the Falcons and where they're placing right now?
Yeah, Bowling Green finished 6th in the Mid-American Conference heading into the MAC tournament in Cleveland. That's a spot worse than they did last year, but record-wise and conference-wise, they finished better than they did last season. They finished the year 18-12 overall and 11-7 in MAC play. That's one more than they had last year, but the top teams in the MAC did better this year as well. So that's why they've fallen down a couple of places. They're taking on the Buffalo Bulls. That is the exact same matchup that was last season in the MAC quarterfinals round. Buffalo beat Bowling Green earlier this season, and head coach Fred Schmiel has yet to beat Buffalo yet during his 2-year tenure. So it's going to make for a tasty matchup, if I do say so myself. I'm very much looking forward to that one. They are the 4th and final game on Wednesday, March 12th, the opening day of the tournament. The other games, the number 1 seed, Ball State against number 8, Western Michigan at 11 a.m., number 4, Kent State against number 5, Miami following that game. That's going to be a very good game. Number 2, Toledo taking on number 7, Central Michigan is the 3rd game. And then, as we said, rounding out is Buffalo taking on Bowling Green, the number 3 seed, and the 6th seed. So should be a good matchup. I think Bowling Green definitely has a chance. I think the way they've ended this season definitely puts them in a prime position. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. Obviously, Buffalo is a pretty good team, and they've had our number in the past couple of seasons, but I think Bowling Green are definitely in prime position to make a run at this thing.
So I don't know if you mentioned it. So the teams matched up last season. Who won? Oh, well, Buffalo won, obviously, because Schmiel has never beaten Buffalo, but he also got the monkey off of his back with Toledo, winning at home against the Rockets in what was a really big matchup a couple weeks ago. So how big would it be if Bowling Green can get past Buffalo? You're staring at a matchup probably against Toledo, but how far do you think they can make it in this thing?
Oh, I think if they get past Buffalo, they can make it all the way a run to the championship and even win that. Now, if you look at the path they go through, let's say they do get by Buffalo, they would most likely play Toledo again in that semifinal round, where they've already beaten Toledo this year, and they've also lost to Toledo, so it'd be the rubber match in the third game. I definitely think they could win. It's obviously a rivalry, so anything can happen, and it's a tournament, so it's just a knockout, single elimination. And then if they get by Toledo, then most likely, again, we're just projecting here, you're looking at Ball State, who won the MAC regular season. They'd be in the championship game, and they are the only loss Bowling Green had in their final 8 games this season. And I think, for my money, they've been clear-cut the best team in the conference this year. So wouldn't say they couldn't do it, but if they beat Buffalo and Toledo, then I wouldn't put anything past them at that point. It's all about momentum, and it's a tournament, so anything can happen as well. So, honestly, yeah, I think if they get by Buffalo, they could definitely make a run at this thing. And, Chaz, you mentioned, too, that Shamil beat Toledo for the first time in his tenure at Bowling Green, which did get the monkey off his back, too. He also beat Kent State for the first time, and a very good Kent State team, 84-61. Those are 2 teams that are in the top teams in the MAC, and that was a big thing we've been saying so far in the Shamil era is, can we beat those top teams? Can we beat the Kent States, the Buffaloes, the Ball States, the Buffaloes of the world? He beat both of them. He beat Toledo, and he beat Kent State. So they've shown now this season that they can beat those top teams, which gives me a lot more confidence heading into this one. But I would be lying to you if I'm not a little bit nervous for this just because of how good Buffalo is. Buffalo may have run all the way to the final last year, lost to Kent State. They're going to want some revenge of their own and get back in the NCAA tournament. But I'm really excited for Wednesday night because I think it's going to be a really good game. And I think the momentum is on Bowling Green's side. And I also think they wanted Buffalo and they wanted to get at them again because considering how last game ended earlier this regular season at home when Buffalo kind of swept the rug from underneath Bowling Green in the fourth quarter and kind of took away a big win.
And yeah, so, I mean, one thing that I think hasn't been brought up enough about Bowling Green is the amount of seniors that they have on this team. They really do have a really older core, a stronger, more developed core. I mean, you've got the Amy Velasco's, the Lexi Flemings, the Erica Porters. Who do you think is going to be that one massive standout player in Wednesday's late-night game against Buffalo?
Well, I think the lazy answer, honestly, would be saying Velasco or Fleming, Porter, or even Kohler. For that instance, because those 4 have just been on fire down the season. But I'm honestly going to go with Donahue. Donahue, because this is going to be her first experience in the MAC tournament as a freshman. And she's, for my money, the best defensive player on the team for Bowling Green. And she's probably going to be matched up with Chella Watson, who's arguably the best pure scorer in the MAC. She's up there in terms of offensive production. She's going to need to be big because I think the other players you look at, Velasco, Fleming, those players have been proven, and you know what you're going to get from them. I think even Kohler, in a sense, you know what you're going to get from her with how well she's been playing down the stretch this season, especially in conference play. I think it's all going to really rely on Donahue. If Donahue can play to her level, if not even better, if she can have a very, very good game and a good tournament guarding Watson and guarding whoever, if they make it down the stretch in the tournament, then I think Bowling Green has a very good chance of winning because I think she's the player that I still think a lot of teams don't quite know a whole lot about yet just because it's her first year with the program and they're starting to learn her a little bit. But yeah, I think Donahue's going to be very important.
I will say she's definitely been the breakout player for Bowling Green, kind of really coming into her own down this later stretch. Starting early, then ending up going more towards the bench, and now starting back up again. She has been a key in a couple of those games. She was massive, I believe, against Toledo. Is that right?
She was. I mean, dude, she leads the MAC in steals per game at 2.4 as a freshman. So, I mean, she's going to be pretty big against Buffalo. But, yes, you're right. She did have a big game against Toledo, locking down McConnellwitz.
So, yeah. I mean, you look at the stretch. I asked the same thing to Artie. Ball State obviously is the easy answer, but who do you think the hardest test for Bowling Green in this tournament will be?
Well, right now it's Buffalo because I don't know who else they're going to play, but...
Good point. Great point.
But, yeah, it'd have to. I mean, yeah, outside of Ball State, man, it might really be Buffalo. But to not be boring, I think personally, if you get Kent State again, that might be a little tough because I think Bowling Green shot the lights out against Kent State in their second to last game at home. Foreman had 21 points, a program record in the first quarter against Kent State. We were just on a roll offensively. Our shots were going in. And I think that if they get matched up with them again, especially with Kent State, they're the defending tournament champions, I think that would probably be a little bit of probably not such a good matchup for Bowling Green because I think Kent State will probably have the motivation on their side to come back and get the win because that loss they took against Bowling Green kind of knocked them down an extra seed. They probably wanted to be that third seed, which would have been playing Bowling Green again. So I personally would not want to play Kent State again if I had to get another team that's not Ball State or Buffalo for that matter.
Yeah, and you're right about that. I mean, that would be a finals game too. So I think also if Kent State were to make it there again, they would be the more experienced team in a situation like that. And that's one thing that Coach Shamil really has got some flack for is, and you brought it up, his ability to win. Can he win those big games? And now he's staring down the opportunity to make it the farthest he's had in the MAC tournament in just his second year, obviously. So that's not saying a whole lot, but he's really got a chance to open this thing up. And you look at him versus Simon, it's now becoming who's going to get their respective program. They started in about the same place. Who's going to get their program farther?
Yeah, true. And I got to say, though, too, with Simon, the men's team, I mean, like the fact that they even got to the MAC tournament this season with all the injuries they had and the, 6-man rotations they were running for parts of the season, 6 or 7-man rotations, is incredible. So proud of them. I'm sure everybody was watching that NIU game, was just pulling their hair out and had no idea what was going on because I don't know how NIU beat Central Michigan, but that's a different conversation. But good for them. And, yeah, like you mentioned it with Shamil and Simon, I mean, they're both kind of maybe under the radar, but they're similar high-profile guys. I mean, I don't think a lot of people knew how good Simon did at Southern Utah. And, Shamil was the top assistant at Don Staley's South Carolina. And give them both credit. I mean, they both got both teams in a position in the tournament in back-to-back years. And why not? I mean, it's a tournament, single elimination, anything goes. It's all about momentum. And I think for Bowling Green, for the women's team, especially the momentum's on their side. And, I mean, the men's team did lose to Western Michigan to close out the year. But I'm actually curious. Do you guys give them a shot against Akron? I don't know if you guys talked about it already.
So Ben has absolutely written off the Falcons so quickly.
Unfortunately.
Bowling Green to the final, in my opinion. No, I do think they will put up a fight against Akron. I don't think they're winning.
Okay, yeah, I'm in the same boat. I wouldn't pick them to beat Akron, but at the same time, I mean, could you say if they get by Akron, I mean, they have to go all the way, right? I mean, there's no way.
I'm looking at it now. They get past Akron, then they've got Ohio or Toledo.
It certainly seems like if they get Akron and Kent State are far and away the teams to beat, and if you beat one of them, everybody else is beatable. So I guess in that regard, you're right that if they're able to win that Akron game, I could see them doing some damage.
I wouldn't count out Miami though either.
Miami's a good pick.
I think Miami's a good team. I just don't think they're going to compete well in the tournament. I think they look like a very good regular season team. Like if you look at someone like Kent State, I think they're going to do better in the tournament than Miami, Ohio would.
Hey, Miami for women's as well, since we were on the topic of women's basketball too. They honestly, I would not be surprised if they upset Kent State. They have been a very under the radar team, and I think a lot of people are going to be introduced to Angelina Gonzalez this tournament. Her and Amber Cheddar were very, very good when they beat Bowling Green earlier this season. I think they could definitely be a dark horse in this thing.
I like that take. That's going to be interesting to watch unfold. Lucas, we know that Tyler and Artie are going to be covering the game, all the games in Cleveland, but I believe you are too. Do you want to talk about that a little bit to us?
Oh, Chaz, I am so excited. I'll be, Caden, Knapp, and I will be on the call for BG Buffalo's games. We'll also have Henry Costco on a couple of broadcasts as well. It could change depending on just schedules and how things lined up. Us 5 are covering the majority of the tournament along with Jack Rindema and Dane. His last name's escaping me, but Dane, another photographer as well. covering the tournament. All the women's games will be on WBGU. That won't change. Hopefully they have more than one game in the tournament if they get by Buffalo. Then on the men's side, everything will live on Falcon Radio as well. Originally, we were going to have the men's championship on WBGU, but a little bit of a hockey situation's come up with our BG hockey team getting to the next round. And I think little old Ben Korek's going to be in a hotel room in South Dakota or Minnesota.
Possibly. Don't know the exact time or day yet, unfortunately. But
hockey's going to be on WBGU that night. So everything's going to live on Falcon Radio for the tournament, unless Bowling Green women are playing. But Falcon Media Sports Network. This is our 4th straight year covering the entire tournament. It's a lot of fun. I call it media boot camp because it's nonstop, 3 straight days. But it's so much fun. You're in an NBA arena, the best team in the NBA, in my opinion, this season. So that's kind of cool to be in their arena. Press conferences, networking, seeing people from other schools, seeing other broadcasters. It's fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be exhausting. It's going to be tiring. Hopefully Bowling Green does well from both sides.
I mean, it's definitely I haven't been to the basketball tournaments, but I've been to the baseball ones, and they are draining. So all my support to you guys. That's going to be a very tough stretch, but very excited to hear you guys grace the radio, both Falcon and WBGU. And Lucas, thank you for joining us. You hinted at hockey. We will hit hockey in just a second. So, Lucas, once again, thank you for giving us your perspective on the women's MAC tournament.
Yep, thanks, guys. Really excited for this tournament. Have a good rest of the show.
All right, bye, Lucas. So, now we've got Ben here. You want to talk to us a little bit about hockey? They had a massive couple of games this past weekend.
Yeah, first time since the 2018-19 season that Bowling Green men's hockey has completed a home series playoff win over a team. The last time in 18-19 it was Michigan Tech. This weekend it was Michigan Tech as well. It's actually the first time since 2019-20 that they've won a playoff series. And Ty Eigner has only won one playoff series. It was in that first year. Didn't win the rest of the time. And the last time Bowling Green has won at home, as they did this last weekend, was in the final year of Chris Bergeron. So it's been a while. It was a really good start to the career of Willie, that he was able to get something done in the first year that he wasn't able to do. Granted, he was given a very good roster of guys and a very talented roster, but he got it done. He switched a lot of the things of the team around. They seem to accept it, and they seem to be playing a very good level of hockey. And if they play the rest of the CCHA Mason Cup like they did against Michigan Tech, they're going to be a very tough team to beat by any of the teams in the Central Collegiate Hockey Association.
So you're right. Willie is really living up to expectations. I mean, I think the number one thing that separated him from Coach Eigner was what's going to happen once playoffs roll around. I mean, winter sports, they always start and they always end. And one thing about Coach Eigner was he was never able to really get the team to extend their season. He could get them to the postseason, but he'd always kind of falter off. And because of that, Willie really had a lot pointing at him, especially with how they ended the season. I mean, you take a loss to St. Thomas February 8th, and then after that you lose to the USA developmental team. That doesn't really matter. But then you've got a tough loss to Bemidji State, get swept once in overtime, once in regular play. Then you lose to Lake Superior State. You end the season on a win at the Slater, but there was a lot of talk that, I mean, they might not have ended up with home ice, right, when it came down to that March 1st game?
Yeah, the February 28th game was the one that really put some fear into Falcon fans, because it was a 4-3 loss for Bowling Green. They weren't able to take the win in a clinching scenario. All they needed to take was to take 3 points on the weekend. Now, in the second game against Lake Superior State, they did. They had a 5-0 lead, ended up winning 5-3, and 3 goals at the end that really did not matter to any outcome of the game. So they took the long way around, as I talked to Willie. That's what I said to him, and he agreed. But they got it done. Actually, the most important singular point that they took in the entire season was when they were the second Bemidji State game, when they went to overtime, because that was the point that ended up tying or putting them ahead in points over Michigan Tech, and ended up giving them that home playoff spot. So that was a huge point to take, although they should have won the game. It's a discussion for another time. But yeah, Willie, it looked like it was going to be a collapse, like they had 4-game losing streak. It looked like it was going to be a collapse like Eigner had done a couple of seasons in a row, but he didn't. He got the win when it mattered, and he got 2 wins when it mattered in the Mason Cup quarterfinal for the first time in a while. It was really great to see. The guys played great. The community showed out, and you could tell that they really loved watching the team on home ice for what's probably going to be the final time this season. It was a lot of fun, and credit to Willie. The team didn't change too much. He brought in a couple of guys that affected some things, but it was the way that he started coaching the team that really turned him around, I believe.
So what do you think was the cause behind that turnaround? Because like you said, 4 straight losses in a row, and then you hit this really big stretch to end the season and one playoff time. What do you think really turned that around for them?
Well, it felt like their mindset hadn't really changed too much. Their mindset was always it was more of a gameplay thing. It was more Willie came in and he put more of an emphasis on the defense that the team was playing. He said that he wants to be high scoring, which he didn't really do this season, but he said he wants to take a lot of shots, and play without the puck was a huge part of his game. Well, the defense went up, which is play without the puck, and the shots on goal. I mean, they led the CCHA in shots on goal, still do, by over 4 shots per game. This weekend they outshot Michigan Tech in both games. I don't think they've been outshot in a game since the St. Thomas series on February 7th and 8th. So if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while for that, and he's done a great job at increasing the offense for Bowling Green, and less so increasing the offense, but making sure that the defense is better. They've allowed the second lowest amount of goals this season of any team. That's Minnesota State has allowed less. Their defense is fantastic, and Augustana, who's played less conference games. Other than that, Bowling Green's allowed the least amount of goals and actually have a plus margin in the CCHA, which is a very hard thing to do. Only a couple of teams do, and they were tied for 3rd coming into this last weekend. I can look it up in a second and figure out where their margin actually is right now, but it's the best offense is a good defense. People say that the best defense is a good offense. Well, it goes the other way as well, and that's what Willie's done. And it also doesn't help that Christian Stover has been one of the best goaltender, probably the best goaltender in the CCHA the second half of the season, a top 3 goaltender in the NCAA in the second half of the season as well. He's been absolutely stunning in the net for Bowling Green. Don't see that stopping anytime soon, the way he's been playing. I think this defense for Bowling Green is certainly something to go watch and something to look out for the rest of the teams. And so
a lot of people probably don't know how the seeding's going to work going into the semifinals. So what's going on? What's BG? What's their outlook like for the rest of the Mason Cup?
Yeah, so we are awaiting the game that's going to be played after we get off the air at 6:07, available on Midco if you want to pay for a subscription very late in the season. The Bemidji State is going to be playing Augustana to figure out what the seeding is going to look like. Minnesota State beat Lake Superior State. That's a 1/8 matchup, so Minnesota State's going to still be the 1 seed after the reseeding. Augustana is playing today, so we don't know whether they're going to be the 2 seed or out. Bemidji State could possibly make it in, but they're going to be the lowest seed if they win. St. Thomas completed a win over Ferris State. They're going to be a seed just above Bowling Green, and Bowling Green's going to be the 3rd or the 4th seed, depending. So if Augustana wins, Bowling Green is going to play Minnesota State at Minnesota State, and if Bemidji State wins, they are going to play St. Thomas at St. Thomas. 2 very tough teams. Minnesota State clearly the better one, so we want Bemidji State to win today, but that's how it looks right now after the reseeding. Both are going to be away. The only way that Bowling Green gets home ice they can't get it next round. They can only get it in the championship, and that is if Augustana loses to Bemidji State. That means Bemidji State will have to play Minnesota State. They will have to upset. Bowling Green will have to beat St. Thomas, and then you would get home championship Mason Cup game in the Slater Family Ice Arena. Very tall order. By my guess is not going to happen, but there's potential.
And I mean, that's kind of what happens when you get this far into the postseason. Is also stuff will not fall your way. All you can control is the games that you win. That's the rest of your season is you win and then you get another game.
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody for Bowling Green really expected to have home ice, maybe except for Willie, expected to have home ice every single game to start the year.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen, and I think you're right. If you get a matchup against Bemidji State, that would be I mean, obviously they do have, what was it, 3 losses to Bemidji?
Well, yeah, the problem is Bemidji State has your number. And again, you have to get through St. Thomas, who's a formidable team, who actually got the better of you. They take more regular season points against you than you did against them this season. So they've kind of got your number, although Bowling Green played great against them. Jake Seibel, their goaltender, has been absolutely on fire, just on par with Christian Stover, I would say, as well, as over the last 2 months, probably one of the best goaltenders in CCHA. Had his best game against Bowling Green and 1-0 loss, I believe. So St. Thomas is still certainly a team to beat. Minnesota State is the team to beat. They are far and away the best team in the CCHA, the McNaughton Cup champions, which is the regular season. They won it. They've been a ranked team the entire season, got as low as 12th in the polls. They are a fantastic team. It is going to be a miracle. It's going to be a miracle on ice for any team to really beat Minnesota State. And I think if any team beats Minnesota State, if that happens to be Bowling Green in the next round, or Bemidji State in the next round, they're going to be the favorite to win the championship, because if you can knock off the far and away top dog, not only are you going to have the momentum, but you're clearly one of the better teams. So. It's Bowling Green's in a decent spot. I wouldn't say they're in a great spot, but the way that they played against Michigan Tech, I'd say that they have a fighting chance against any team in the CCHA, whether it's Minnesota State, St. Thomas, or Augustana or Bemidji.
So the hockey world, for the listeners, I know BGSU is a hockey area, but for those who might not know, what happens? Is it like March Madness in a way, where if you win the championship, you get an auto bid towards NCAA? Like, what happens there?
Yeah, so the championship winner gets an automatic bid. It's a little bit different because Augustana does not qualify for the NCAA tournament yet. So whoever faces against Augustana in the championship, if that happens, it will come down to the decision of the CCHA on who they want to send, whether that's going to be the team that Augustana plays or whether that's going to be Minnesota State, who's the McNaughton champions. It's probably going to be Minnesota State no matter what happens, but there's a chance, if Bowling Green knocks off Minnesota State, gets to the championship against Augustana, even if Bowling Green loses, they could still be selected by the CCHA to go because they went farther and they knocked off the top dog. It's a very tall order for Bowling Green to get to the NCAAs. It's a lot tighter, in my opinion, a little. You could argue whether it's more or less enjoyable. You have to deserve it more to get into the hockey iteration of the postseason tournament. The Frozen Four is a lot of fun. It's essentially also like the tournament where if you get put in, like if Bowling Green wins the whole thing, they're going to go up against Boston or MSU, who are top 5 teams. So you're pretty much going to lose. But it would be really cool to make the NCAAs for the first time since the 2018-19 season. That would be a very cool thing to happen. But Willie is a very next game up kind of mentality. He doesn't care what's down the line. He probably doesn't even know that if they make the NCAAs, they're going to be in Toledo. He probably doesn't even know that. He's just worried about watching the game today and then looking forward to Minnesota State or St. Thomas this coming weekend, either Friday or Saturday. That's going to be on his mind and just the mind of the team.
So that's actually interesting. So if the Falcons did win the entire Mason Cup, they end up playing, I'm assuming, at Walleye Stadium in Toledo?
Yeah, they would be playing at Toledo, so that's one of the host sites. Bowling Green is actually one of the host teams, even if they don't make it. So, the SIDs, the workers, they will be at doing the information work, doing the live stats, stuff like that. They'll be hosting, which means that no matter who it is, the 4 teams that will be playing in Toledo, I think it's 4 teams in St. Louis, North Dakota, Toledo, and Boston, maybe something to that effect. Toledo's one of those places. 4 teams will play there. Last thing I saw was MSU, Boston, Michigan, and the winner of the Mason Cup, which could happen. It would be really cool because that would essentially be a home game for Bowling Green. And if they went up against a Michigan State or a Michigan, that would be a rematch of the old CCHA when they were all in the same conference together, which would be a really cool happening. But again, 2 more games that you have to win, and 2 very tough games as well, your toughest games of the season. So very, very, very tough looks for Bowling Green. Very tall order that they get to do it, but it would be very cool if they were able to.
Yeah, so a lot to look forward to. That will wrap up our winter slate of sports. Hockey, probably, I'd say, is in the best positioning right now. Would you say, Ben?
Well, they've already won 2 playoff games.
That's what I'm saying.
So I'd say so. Yeah, that they've probably already, barring the basketball teams going on a miracle run, which could happen.
Akron, look out, Akron.
If Bowling Green beats Akron, they will have a better run, even if Bowling Green loses the next round. But this is probably second most successful. Well, actually, in conference, the most successful Bowling Green's team has been this season, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, because volleyball lost in the first round. Bowling Green's hockey's already made it past, and football didn't make it to the tournament. So, it's already been the most successful in a conference tournament for Bowling Green team so far.
Well, technically, no, because volleyball technically got a first-round bye.
But they didn't win a game.
They didn't win a game, but they made it to the second round.
But they won 2 games.
Are we counting wins, or are we counting distance?
I would say count wins, just because
I would say count wins.
I feel like in a playoff atmosphere, that's what's most
Now, granted,
important.
it was a very tough team for Bowling Green volleyball.
I mean, you lost to the champions.
But still, hockey won the games.
That is true.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think hockey right now has been the breadwinner. I don't know if
it's going to depend on basketball too, because if hockey loses next round, basketball upsets Akron, or even Fred Shamil takes it to Buffalo. Buffalo is what? That's a 3 versus 6. I think it's 3 versus 6 seed. So that would be a big one as well. Maybe a little bit different. We'll have to discuss it then. But right now they're on top.
I'd say by the end of the year, though, it will be baseball, which is a really great transition into what we're about to talk about, as BGSU baseball pulled off a really impressive weekend series against the Ohio Bobcats, swept them to open up MAC play. And the crazy thing is, in 3 straight games, Bowling Green has exploded in the 8th inning, going down in runs. Almost said points. I got to switch my brain before I get fired from FMSN for doing that. But switching over to runs, they were down in runs and then just exploded. In the 7th inning today against Ohio, Falcons were scoreless going into the 7th with the Bobcats up. They were up 6-0 going into the 7th. Bowling Green scored 5 runs to make it 5-6, and then Ohio answered with 1, so it was 5-7. Then Bowling Green scored the next 5. They won 10-7, held the Bobcats scoreless in the final 2 to win the game, win the series. It was also Bowling Green head coach Kyle Halleck's 100th win as a Falcon, which is something to be really proud of. And this past week, they also run ruled for the first time this season. They took on the Dayton Flyers and just smoked them, winning, I believe, 14-4, which you got to be proud of there in 7th inning. So a lot to look forward to for Bowling Green baseball. A lot of highs, a lot of lows, but now they've got their first home game of the year against, is it the Tiffin Dragons? I
think so. It's something like that. I can look it up.
It's Tiffin for sure, but I'm seeing their mascot and it looks like a dragon, but I'm going to say Tiffin Dragons for right now.
Yeah, say it for right now. I'll look it up.
So they got the Tiffin Dragons March 11th. That's Tuesday. That's at 3 p.m. Same time as the Swoop. You can check that out on
Looks like it is just the Dragons.
So the Tiffin Dragons. So that'll be interesting. I think you can chalk that up as a win. It depends on some of the weekend guys, but
I don't know for sure how Tiffin stacks up, but I know the way that the Bowling Green offense is operated, that it's going to be a very tough contest for Tiffin to come in at home, which should be pretty decent turnout. I think the weather looks pretty good for that day as well. I can look at it right now, but it's going to be 60 degrees and sunny. I mean, that's spring baseball weather right there. So, and the way this offense has functioned, it's going to come down. The entire game is going to come down to the pitching of Bowling Green, which I think it has all season, and is going to be a huge look for the Falcons overall. Because last year we had no concerns about their offense at all. We only had concerns about their pitching, and we're coming into a point of this season as well where their pitching gave up a pretty sizable lead to Ohio. Granted, their offense was able to pull them back into the game, but when it gets down to MAC tournament time later in the season, you can't be affording to allow early runs to to teams that are not, Ohio's not the greatest, and you allowed 17 total runs to them on the weekend. You scored 24, but that's a lot of runs to be given up, and it's certainly something you have to monitor going forward for this baseball team that's had a tough time with the pitching in the last 2 years for Halleck, who's the pitching guy.
I will say this, though. I think you're right. I think that pitching for Bowling Green is still a weakness. It looked a lot stronger to begin the year than it has right now. And
yeah. Well, at least you have Landon Williman looks good.
Landon Williman looks great.
Which is good because last year you had we were talking at a certain point about who was the best, and nobody really looked good. Like you were deciding
besides
aces
Newman.
Besides DJ Newman, who didn't play against Ohio either, which
he didn't bat or pitch.
A little bit concerning, but we can talk. We won't speculate because we don't know actually if anything's wrong with him. But at least now you have two solid starters if Newman's healthy, with Williman in there as well. Connor Penrod looks very good coming out of the bullpen.
Speaking of good,
literally
Nick Good
perfect.
Too.
Nick Good has been pretty good this season, not to the level of Williman. I think Jacob Turner has a lot of potential. So the pitching looks up. It's just whether or not you can see results out of them deeper into the season. You didn't see too great of a showing from them against Ohio, although there's still time. There's still time for them to look better.
Connor Penrod has been phenomenal. Genuinely, he has been the closer for Bowling Green. He is that guy. This past season, last year he had a little bit of a down year. The year before that, he was phenomenal. But now, you just look at him and it's like, this is a guy that is going to win you baseball games single-handedly. He's going to be, if your pitching gets beat up and you just kind of need to let your offense sustain and just kind of keep the other team down, Penrod can do that. And then you look at today. So the Falcons win 10-7. Williman went 3 innings. He allowed 6 hits for 3 runs. All of them earned, a walk and 2 strikeouts. And, that's pretty decent. You go down a little bit lower. Ty Roeder was given the win, his first win of the year in 1 2/3 innings. He only allowed a hit, no scores, 1 strikeout, and he faced 5 batters, so he did pretty solid there. And then Titus Lutz was given the save in 1 inning, total to end the game. No hits, no runs, and 1 strikeout for 3 batters. So very consistent. I like what I saw today because I think Williman got punched in the mouth early. And then Logan Bell, Logan Bell arguably had one of the worst performances of the weekend just because he gave up. He only pitched a third of an inning, gave up or had no strikeouts, allowed a walk, 2 earned runs and 2 total runs on 3 hits. So it's one of those situations where he kind of got punched in the mouth a little bit. Luke Krause, 2 2/3 innings, pretty good. A hit, a run. It was earned, no walks and a strikeout. So I'm liking what I'm seeing. The number one thing I'm excited about BGSU's pitching is the walks. I think they've done a good job at not walking as many guys so far this year. Look at...
Yeah, I do like the ratio. That was my complaint about them as well last season, is that you can't be putting guys on base, and they were doing it a lot with no outs, 1 out, which early in the inning is first batter is an unforgivable time to put a guy on base. You just really can't let that happen. They had pretty good ratios this weekend against Ohio, which I certainly like to see. I think we were wrong, though. DJ Newman is credited with 4 innings pitched in the first game against Ohio.
No, but he didn't bat.
Yes, but he did pitch, and he did not pitch great. 4 innings, 3 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, but 1 walk, and 19 batters faced, and 6 hits as well, and his 3 earned runs. So he gave up 3 of the 4 earned runs that game. Not that great, but Ty Roeder came in, did pretty decent, and Lotz and Penrod closed it out. Penrod taking the 2-inning save with a strikeout and some pretty efficient pretty efficient pitching as well. The team is going to revolve around what the offense does, but the most important part of the team, I think, is going to be their pitching, because if they can really get Newman functioning at a high rate like he was last year, Penrod, I think, is going to be a valuable asset all season. It's really tough to come in. That's why guys pitching 1 inning are so successful, because it's very I don't want to say easy, but it's easier to come in for 1 inning, shut 3 guys down, even for 2 innings, shut a couple of guys down, and go home with a win. That's a very valuable aspect of the game. But Penrod probably shouldn't have too much fall off. But getting Williman in is going to be a very big asset for Bowling Green to put him with Newman, have 2 starters, and then you can throw a bullpen day if you want, or you can really put some weight on the shoulders of Jacob Turner as well.
I think Turner might be that weekend guy, or weekday guy.
Yeah.
I think Nick Good has built up enough good rapport. He had a good game yesterday. I think he's going to be that Saturday guy. Newman's going to be the Friday, and then you're going to have Williman as your Sunday.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that is obviously subject to change. It's baseball. You always got to tweak things here and there. But right now, that would be my prediction. And then you have Turner as your weekend. Or, wow, I did it again. As your weekday.
Yeah.
But I want to move over to the offense. Because the offense, they had a big day today. 10 runs. And 3 hits for 3 runs. Gavin Gannon in left field, which is absolutely great for him. He's had a couple bad games. But as a whole, he has been more of a big play guy. And then you've got Zach Horky, and they move him over to right field. He had 3 RBIs, a homer, 3 hits, and 3 runs. So, I mean, big day out of him. There's just so much depth in Bowling Green's offense, too. Everybody in that lineup, no matter who you throw in there, no matter who you sit on the bench, they can all smack the baseball, and I think that's a really good thing for the Orange and Brown.
Yeah, it seems like they've had a couple of guys who really separated themselves, covering softball as well, that has had that same aspect where they kind of get their starters. Looks like baseball's pretty early in the season, got their guys. It's very easy with Garrett Wright. Birchmeyer is cementing his spot in the lineup. Seidel looks very good. Antillion looks very good. Caden Parker looks pretty good as well. Gavin Gannon and Horky look like guys that could work their way in limited at-bats. Horky more than Gannon, but they look pretty good. I think Gannon's going to be, or should be, a staple. I mean, 33 at-bats for a 364 average, a 667 slugging, and a 432 on base for over 1,000 OPS from a guy that's only got 33 at-bats. I'm assuming he's probably going to get more as the season progresses. But yeah, the top of the lineup is really something to look out for Bowling Green. That's a tough stretch to get through with Garrett Wright, DJ Newman, Brady Birchmeyer, and Sam Seidel. Seidel's got a surprising amount of power. And it's very nice to see out of him this season. Hopefully he can get on base a little bit more as the season goes on, because he does seem to be a slight strikeout threat in bad spots. But it is what it is, and I just like the way this offense is set up is very dangerous indeed.
And one thing that I think is really good too, this team doesn't have a Nathan Archer. You could argue the DJ Newman, but they don't have a Nathan Archer in the sense of there's not a guy that you rest all your hopes on at the very end of the game. And there were times last season where it felt like you just kind of looked at this guy and you say, Nathan Archer, please save us, because the offense has fallen flat. You really need something big, and you're just hoping on one guy. Brady Birchmeyer has been a massive dude. Quite literally, he's a big guy. I believe he's 6'4", 6'5". And then you've got, he can mash the baseball. He comes in clutch moments. Gavin Gannon had a couple clutch hits early on this season. Garrett Wright, you mentioned his ability to get walks. He is very lethal on the base pass. Same with Sam Seidel. Antillion has been a really good addition. And then DJ Newman, who we didn't even see above home plate, has been great. So as a whole, very excited for how many different guys they have plugging in and out of that. And I think that's going to do us for the baseball talk, because I think we've summed it up pretty well. They've got MAC series against Akron coming up next week. I've been trying to convince Tyler to house me during the MAC tournament just to call this game because I'm so excited. But Akron's coming up. That's going to be a big series. Then they've got a couple big home games all in a row. After that, they've got Purdue, Fort Wayne, Dayton, and then Kent State. So, Ben, you mentioned it. Let's move over to softball now. What's been going on with the Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, a lot's been going on with the Falcons, and it looks like some pretty good stuff. Still not a top team in the MAC, obviously, but some very good things to see out of how they've played this season in the first of Michelle Gardner. They've really taken a massive step forward. I mean, anybody that followed the team last year, or at least knows what they did, know that they only had 6 wins last year, 9 wins the year before. They're already at 5, and they haven't even sniffed. They're sniffing it now, but they haven't sniffed conference play yet. Just played their first weekend in cold weather in Indianapolis at the 2025 Hoosier Classic. Took 2 wins, one against Illinois Chicago and one against IU Indy, 2 teams that are low win total teams, but in the same position of Bowling Green, where they've played very well, all things considered. Since the last time, I forget the last time that we had softball talk on the Zig Zone. Bowling Green's got 5 wins. 2 against Monmouth in their first series of the season, were 2-3 after that. Took win against Tulsa in the final of an Oklahoma series as well, although they also took Oklahoma to 8 innings. Had a 3-run walk-off home run, but they were tied 5-5 in the 8th inning against the number 2 team in the nation at the time and a 4-time defending national champion. So that's what Michelle Gardner's team has done this season. That's probably been their premier game, is taking Oklahoma to extra innings. Every broadcast that they've had of BGSU softball this season, the other team or the other team's broadcasters has mentioned how they took Oklahoma to extra innings, which is a huge thing in the softball world, considering they're the number 2 team in the nation. They then had a tournament in the South Carolina, which was their only winless tournament of the season, but it was a very tough one. 2 games against UConn, 2 against Wisconsin, and 2 against Coastal Carolina. All of those very good teams in their respective conferences, all of them surely more talented than Bowling Green. It probably should be, considering their conference and their prestige. And then in a series that we expected them to be able to take a couple of wins, they did. They took exactly the wins that we thought. The 2 Indiana games, they unfortunately lost. Unsurprisingly, it's a Big Ten team at their home field. But then UIC and IU Indy, they took 2 wins. A 7-6 win over UIC was not as close as the score showed, and then a 7-2 win over IU Indy that was just as the score showed. It was pretty sizable performance from Bowling Green softball. They head into their first MAC games against Buffalo. They have 1 game on Friday, March 14th, and a doubleheader on Saturday, March 15th. As their first of the season, Buffalo is the only team right now that's below them in the standings through non-conference play. And we're getting into conference now for softball after the first weekend of conference for baseball. And a very good start for Michelle Gardner in her first year for sure.
Yeah, I do really agree with that. I think Michelle Gardner has really shown out since coming to Bowling Green. It was, again, I guess today there's just a Zig Zone theme of coaching additions and what they bring, as Michelle Gardner has really injected this team with so much. They feel gritty. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They feel like really hungry. And after last season, really disappointing. A lot of that roster stayed relatively similar. You've had a couple key losses, a couple good additions, but yeah. They've got Buffalo coming up, and you mentioned it off air. That feels like a winnable series.
Yeah, it does, and especially the way they've been playing the last couple. Haven't had MAC competition yet, aside from Akron. Akron's one of the better teams. They're a top 5 team in the MAC right now, so it's not a great test, but they battled with them pretty hard, and even since that game, they've taken a big step forward. They've pretty much, or Gardner has pretty much solidified her starters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9 players are registered as at least 2 plate appearances per game, which is a feat for a team that has just played in non-conference play, that they essentially have their starting 9. Like, I could tell you right now who their starting 9 is going to be on the first game of conference play. The tougher part, like baseball, is deciding who their pitcher is going to be, because they only have 1 registered or minimum requirement pitcher of 1 inning pitched per game. That's Scarlett Anderson. She's got 42 innings pitched. The next closest to her is 19 for Mackenzie Kravchik and Sydney Marshall. Sydney Marshall, a freshman, Kravchik, a junior, and the leading inning pitcher coming into this season. Scarlett Anderson's been pretty good. She's got a sub-4 ERA, which for this team is a big plus, but the rest of the team's pitching has not been too fantastic. They're good for probably about 3 3 innings at a time, and then they start to unravel a little bit. And I think this season we're going to look at Bowling Green softball as a lot of bullpen days. As Gardner said before the season started, she'll pitch 1 pitcher per inning if she has to. It's looking like she's got to pitch 1 every second, third inning, something like that, because they just seem to not do so well the second, third time through the lineup. Unsurprisingly, I mean, no pitcher does really, but the talent that they have on this team needs to be supported with some new looks every once in a while, and they've been impressive to me as somebody that followed them pretty decently close last season, and moving over into this season as well. They've shown immense improvement, and the fact that they've hashed out their starting 9 is very very incredible to me, frankly, and the fact that they're playing as well as they are, again, is just incredible. Almost at the same win total from last year, in just non-conference play in less than half of the same amount of time.
Yeah, so such a great overturn for BGSU softball, about to beat their win total from last season, and that's not saying a whole lot. They're 5-15 right now, got to get to 6 wins, but you're right. A lot of major success coming out of this team, considering where they were, but there's a lot more distance to cover up for where they've got to be. They want to be as successful as I know Coach Gardner wants them to be. That's the whole reason she took the job, was to get big wins. So, yeah. But, Ben, I kind of want to fold back 2 discussions ago now.
Oh, yeah. I have a little bit of a bracket hashed out here for all 3 of us, for both the men's and the women's.
Well, hang on.
Get through it.
Hang on. I'm going back even further. We talked about everything, and we talked about who was the most successful in MAC play, in the MAC tournaments. Well, BGSU indoor track and field just won the MAC title. Mm-hmm. And we didn't discuss that at all. Absolutely massive out of them. We got to give them their congratulations. Big performances out of Kylie Cubison. You've got so many different. Reese Raymond is freshman of the year, just so good out of everything. Big kudos to them, and they have definitely been the best program so far this year.
Yeah, certainly. Winning a MAC title. Volleyball won the regular season, but for track to be able to do it is very, very impressive for them. Obviously, we don't talk about them a whole lot. I know Holden Ruck does a good job because he covers them a little bit more tightly than we do. It's impressive what they're able to do. It's impressive what they do year in, year out. I remember talking last year with Holden Ruck. He said they were going to be a pretty dangerous team this year, and he was right. And I'm sure I'll be the first one to tell us that next week when he's back on and talking to us about track. The non-revenue sports, unfortunately, don't get a lot of our attention, but certainly some great athletes and some great performances come out of it.
All right, Ben, let's get this rain check going. Let's get the show on the road.
All right. First matchup, we'll start with men's. Akron versus Bowling Green, number 1 versus number 8.
Akron.
I'm going to go out of loyalty. I'll go Bowling Green.
You're going to go Bowling Green?
I am the beat for it, so out of loyalty, I'm going to go with Bowling Green.
Okay. I am going to take Akron.
All right.
Chaz is going to take Akron as well.
Yep.
You're not going to sell your soul?
No,
okay.
I'm going to sell yours.
Number 4, Toledo. Number 5, Ohio.
Give me Toledo. No, actually, give me Ohio. Toledo's been really bad as of late.
Okay.
I was about to say exactly what Chaz was about to say. I'm also going Ohio for that reason. They've lost 4 in a row. They got to win, but they were on a 4-game.
I'm going to go Toledo. 1, to break the tie. 2, because I think they get going when it really matters. So that's going to be my take. Number 2, Miami. Number 7, Eastern Michigan University.
Oh, give me Miami.
Miami. I think that's going to be a clean sweep right there.
Yep.
On the number 2, Miami. And then Western Michigan and Kent State University. That's a pretty tough one, I'd say.